The Rocket Review is sponsored by Why Not Saloon.
He's in the Bluegrass Hall of Fame. He's been a member of the Newgrass Revival. Singer, songwriter, bassist, John Cowan. John, it's nice to finally have you on the show.
Eric, it's my pleasure.
And you've got a brand new book that came out in May.
I do, it's brand
Hold
new.
to a Dream. Look at that hair.
I know. That's your vintage 89 right there.
I mean, how incredible, but it's so interesting. You know, you and I were talking, John, before we came down to the studio to do the interview, to where, you know, you've been here in Nashville, you know, for a good number of years. I mean, coming out of Ohio originally. Mm-hmm. And then, as we were talking about, you know, Kentucky with Newgrass Revival.
Yep.
Lead singer. Now, I got to ask you on this one, too. Is this story true to where, you know, Sam Bush and the guys hire you into Newgrass Revival as the bassist, mm-hmm. and you didn't tell them you could sing until after you were hired?
I didn't really, because I was smart enough to know that I was fish out of water. I had, even though I grew up in Kentucky, mm-hmm. you'd think I would have known something about bluegrass.
Right.
I knew nothing. I was just living in the suburbs, playing in little garage bands, playing whatever was on the radio at that time. And radio at that time was unbelievable.
Oh, totally.
It was like, it went from Buck Owens to Ray Charles to Aretha Franklin to Jimi Hendrix, mm-hmm. the Beatles. It's like everything was just loud and proud right in your ear, in your face.
And you end up in a bluegrass band, and actually a game-changing, you know, new grass band.
Yep.
I mean, that's just an incredible story in itself, and I mean, we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, that's how I was 21. I was living in Louisville, working in a car wash. And I got a call from this guy named Sam Bush, and he said, I got your number from our friend, our mutual friend, Ken Smith, and we're looking for a bass player. And he said, you play good and you sing pretty good. And I was like, so I loaded up in a car with my best friend, Tom Britt, who's still my best friend. And we drove down to Western Kentucky, to around the Cave City area.
Yeah.
And I went in, and we just sat around and played music all day.
Wow.
And they had a drummer at the time, because I guess at that point they thought, well, maybe if we get drums, we could be more successful. And so I got up the next morning after auditioning or playing music with these guys for about 3 hours the day before. And the drummer's on the front porch, and he's loading his car up, and he's kind of crying. And I'm like, what's going on? He goes, they fired me. I said, well, why did they fire you? He said, well, they said that they don't need me anymore since you're here.
So you lost the drummer his job when you joined the Newgrass Revival.
Because I was, I think, the first real person that played electric bass. That's what I did.
Right. Yeah, and you and I were having that conversation because, you know, it's like somebody like myself who is a guitarist and plays at bass, totally different, because a bass player like yourself, I mean, just thinks different and lays down the rhythm foundation.
Yeah, the original bass player who's a really good upright bass player. Mm-hmm. He tried switching to electric, and it didn't go so well. Yeah. And I understand that that's a big jump to make from one of those, from that instrument to a little bitty electric bass. Right. His name was Ebo Walker. Mm-hmm. But when I came in, I was just a bass player who happened to sing. Yeah. And
sing very well.
Yeah, but I didn't even tell him I could sing for about 6 months. I was too busy trying to keep my head above water. I'd never played without drums. Mm-hmm. I knew nothing about bluegrass music. Yeah. Except for I had bought the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band album. Now that was
great call.
And as a rock and roller, the first time I heard that, I was like, well, who's this guy Vassar Clements, and who's Roy Acuff, and who's Mother Maybelle? And, but that was really my introduction. But it doesn't matter, because when I got down there to Western Kentucky, I was like, what do I do?
And such a powerful band, because I mean, you were with the Newgrass Revival from what, 1972 until 1990?
No, 74 to 1990.
74 to 90. How amazing is that? But then also, you know, your solo records and everything you've done. You know, you started playing with a little band. I think they've got great possibilities back in the 90s. You know, with the Doobie Brothers. Right. And you jammed with a number of those guys before. You know, with different bands.
I knew Patrick Simmons from Bill Lloyd, one of my other best friends, who I'm sure you know, who was part of Foster and Lloyd.
Right.
Bill and I met in Bowling Green when we were literally 22, and we're still great friends today. I saw him yesterday. Anyways, so I was in a band with Bill Lloyd and Rusty Young from Poco and Patrick Simmons from the Doobie Brothers called the Sky Kings.
Right.
And that's how I wound up being in the Doobies, through that connection.
Yeah. And so then you were in there with the Doobies in the 90s, and you're back on the road with the Doobies now.
Yeah, it's been 14 years now.
Right. How
2010.
incredible.
I know.
You know, and besides, you know, and obviously your new book, you know, Hold to a Dream. I mean, and I was kidding you about it. You know, you've got a foreword by Wendy Waldman, but also the blurbs on the back, you know, I know, you know, it was hard to get people to come in and say anything good about you for the book, but, you know, the first one starts off with Garth Brooks, Alison Krauss, Lyle Lovett, and then interviews in the book include Kristofferson,
Loretta Lynn,
Sam Bush, Sam Moore,
Justin Hayward from the Moody Blues, John Carter Cash, Bonnie Bramlett, Bernie Leadon.
Oh my gosh, Bernie.
Bela Fleck, Sam Bush. I'm going to leave somebody out, but
how long did it take to write this book? And I know that Jimmy Schwartz worked with you on it, but I mean, how long?
It started as an interview because I had a radio show for 15 months
on
WSM.
No, it was WSM. That's right.
And it was called I Believe to My Soul. It was just peer to peer. It was kind of what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Musician to musician. Now, Leon Russell was the first person I interviewed because Newgrass Revival had been his band for 78, 79, and 80. So when I got the opportunity to do this show on WSM, they were like, well, who can you get? And I was like, I don't know. So I picked up the phone and I called Leon. And Leon hates interviews.
I know, he does.
But he loved me.
I couldn't get him on. See?
No, he won't do it.
Yeah, but because you guys were like the band to Ronnie Hawkins, except with Leon.
Yeah, exactly. And we remained great friends all through his life. In fact, I saw him 5 days before he passed away, which was crazy because none of us knew that was going to happen. But anyways, so Leon was kind enough to say, well, I'll be on your radio show, for God's sake. And so he's the first person I interviewed. So I interviewed, this show aired once a month for 15 months, and those are all the interviews from that. Wow. So the book started as, let's do a book with interviews of famous musicians. And the publisher was like, well, I don't know if that doesn't really necessarily ring our bell, but why don't you go back and write an introduction to each person that you interviewed about your relationship to them, albeit personally or music. Right. So I did that, and they were like, well, you write pretty good. What do you think about maybe writing maybe a third of the book will be a memoir about your time from when you were born up to when Newgrass Revival broke up. Right. So it is partial memoir, but most of the book is the interviews.
How incredible.
I know.
But your life is so storied too, and you're not going to brag, so I will. So besides getting into the Bluegrass Hall of Fame, which you did in 2020, I mean, you've played on sessions with Travis Tritt. I mean, the list goes on and on of top list musicians that you've been in Nashville playing on their sessions.
Yeah, I still do it. I mean, it's funny because even though I've done, and that was just a 15-year period of my life, but I'm still known as John Cowan from Newgrass Revival.
You are, because it's so funny because when I mention to people, it's like, well, who are you having on the show? It's like, well, I'm interviewing John Cowan. They go, oh yeah, Newgrass Revival. Right. You know, it's like going with everything else you've done, with the Sky Kings, with your solo work, you know, with your album 60 that you did, which was packed with guest stars.
Well, it's the thing I'm most proud of, especially once we got in the Hall of Fame, which none of us ever thought was possible.
Well, and then also, you know, you come out with a new album this year.
Yeah.
Fiction.
Yeah. It's actually out. The first single's out now. And it is a return to the music that I did in Newgrass Revival. It's just me singing, playing electric bass, mandolin, guitar, fiddle, and banjo.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And the fans have been asking for this.
Yeah.
For years.
I think the people that know me from Newgrass are going to be really excited by it. I'm personally, I'm just having the time of my life.
Well, you know, and in between having a new book out, and obviously the book signings have been going great, sold out at Parnassus. I know you're going to have more book signings and everything coming out. But, you know, you're touring with the Doobie Brothers. Great gig. and then you've got a new album out, and then in your spare time, when you're not on the road with the Doobie Brothers, you and Andrea Zonn are doing the HercuLeons.
Right, and that record's coming out in January. So we would do it full time, except we both have real jobs.
Right.
Her real job, fortunately for them and for him and for her, is she's been with James Taylor for almost 20 years.
Amazing.
And now I've been with the Doobies this time for 14 years. So that's my real job.
Right. And if you put your years together, you've almost got 20 with the Doobie Brothers also.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys have good gigs. So you got your regular gig, and then you have your side hustles.
We came by it honestly.
But it had to be a lot of fun too, you know, working on this book and kind of going back over your musical history, because, you know, I mean, you've got so much history with so many different artists. And like you were bringing up with Leon Russell, and then also, you know, you were playing in the Sam Bush band. Right. You know, it's like there's multiple facets, and you're not only known as an incredible bassist, but also people bring you in just for vocals.
Yeah, most of the session, almost exclusively the session work I've done over the years has been as a singer.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, but you were talking too, you know, before we started the show, John, to where it's like, you know, you get to feed your heart when you're not on the road. You have like so many down months to where you can chase these creative projects like the HercuLeons.
Yeah. I make good use of my time. I'm like my mother who lived to be 104 and a half. I'm not good at sitting still.
Right, but I think that's worked out for you.
It has.
I mean, because with a band like the Doobie Brothers, with the harmonies, you and I were talking, both growing up with their music and just amazing talent. And when you've got, you know, Tommy Johnson, you've got Patrick Simmons, John McVie, and Michael McDonald back with them.
Yep.
And then, you know, you've got those harmonies, you've got the whole breadth of the catalog.
The beauty of Michael coming back is that now both catalogs, both parts of the Doobie Brothers are played in one evening.
Right.
Because it was kind of like two separate things. When Tommy left due to health problems, you know, Tommy wrote not all, but a lot of the songs that people know, China Grove, Listen to Music, and anyways. But then when he left and Mike came in, that's when Taken to the Streets happened. And then all the subsequent albums that Michael was on.
Right.
So now you get it all in one evening.
Well, it's got to be fun for you as an artist, though, also, because once again, you know, listening to the songs and knowing the catalog, the bass playing in the Michael McDonald years gets a little more complicated in places.
Yeah, it's been so good for me as a bass player. Yeah. But I mean, their original bassist, Tyran Porter, is a monster.
He is.
And he's a complete, wonderful gentleman. We've talked many times. In fact, the first time I talked to him on the phone, I was shocked because I was a huge fan of Tyran's because I'm a bass player.
Right.
And he was in the Doobie Brothers, and so much of his work, his bass playing was so amazing.
Yes.
So I just got his number from John McVie, and I called him up one day, and he goes, "John Cowan from Newgrass Revival, Can't Stop Now, you're amazing." And I was like, "You're Tyran Porter."
That is so humbling, though, you know. And I wanted to bring up too, you know, with the tour that you're on this year with the Doobie Brothers, you know, you guys are also out on tour with the Eagles, which, you know, you've got another Nashville guy, Vince Gill. So, you know, I'm sure you guys are going to hang out and tell a few jokes, maybe.
That's pretty much what we do. We tell bad and dirty jokes to each other. And we've known, Vince and I met when we were in Leon Russell's band. We met in Mobile, Alabama at a festival. Vince was there with Pure Prairie League. Now, he already knew Sam and Courtney and Curtis, I'm pretty sure. But that was my first meeting with Vince. Yeah. And he was there with Pure Prairie League, and so our friendship goes, it's almost 50 years old.
Wow. And you're only like 53 now, so it's amazing.
I was 3.
You were a child prodigy.
Vince was 2, and I was 3 when we met.
Well, you know, I'm just going to say, you know, your mother lived to over 104, so it's good genetics, John. Well, I want to make sure for our viewers with everything, particularly the new book, which is just incredible.
Thank you.
I'm so glad that you got this out with the interviews, but also, you know, with your history, your memoir within here. I know people are going to want a copy for themselves, and you're going to have more book signings. You've got the new album, Fiction, coming out. You're going to have another new album coming out with Andrea, you know, with HercuLeons in January.
Yep.
And so, and besides that, they can go see you on tour with the Doobie Brothers.
Yes, you can. We're all over.
Yeah, all over. And so what is the best website and social media and everything to keep up with everything John Cowan?
Well, for me, it's johncowan.com or John Cowan Music on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram, John Edward Cowan. But then DoobieBrothers.net will answer all your questions about the comings and goings of the fabulous Dubois.
You have an amazing life, John. I mean, it's just incredible. And I'll tell you what, you're going to want to dig into it more, particularly with this book, with the interviews. Kristofferson, so many incredible people, you know, that John interviewed, but also just John's life and his music, which continues. You want to get your own copy. Hold to a Dream. It's out now. It's available at Amazon. I recommend going to his website also.
Because you can buy signed copies.
Yeah,
there.
to get the signed copy, which is always better.
I think so.
Yeah, and just like the music and everything you're rolling out too. And, you know, there needs to be like a revival of the Newgrass Revival at some point in your spare time.
Well, we'll see. I'll try to work those guys in.
Yeah, somewhere along. Yeah. Well, be sure and get your own copy. Check out his new music. Go see John Cowan live on tour with the Doobie Brothers in a city near you. You're going to enjoy it as much as I always do. John, thanks for coming on the show.
Eric, what a pleasure.
The Rocket Review is sponsored by Why Not Saloon.